Hello.
Yeah, hi, Frodo.
Hello. Just want to make sure I have the right microphones and
Sure.
all of that. How are you?
Yeah, doing well.
Good,
How are
good.
you?
I just got a new build of the. Hang on. Let me just check here. Yes, that's it. Hey, Tom.
Good morning, afternoon, whatever is appropriate.
I'm just going to.
Eric, where are you physically located? I haven't asked that before.
Yeah, I'm in Delaware, so Eastern
Okay.
Time.
So, yeah, it's still good morning to you.
Yeah, almost lunchtime. Yeah.
Before we do other stuff, can you guys who are on Macs, please click on that link and see if it'll run. I've done a new thing for you.
What link?
Oh, it didn't send. One second. Thank you for checking in the chats. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You are most.
Hang on.
Yeah, downloaded a zip file.
That's a good start.
Let's see.
Sending us viruses again, Froda?
Viruses, of course. Hello, Astral.
Hello, good morning.
Are you still awake?
I am still awake. I was up all night last night. I'm just, I was
So I asked Eric
uh,
this question. Where are you physically, at least time zone wise, located, Astral?
I'm US East Coast right now.
Okay. Is that your usual location, East Coast?
Yeah, it is right now.
Okay.
Are you in New York City by any chance? I ask because of the mayor. I'm a big fan, so I'm just wondering.
My YouTube feed is giving. I'm living vicariously through New York's current YouTube feed right now.
Yes. Yeah, the
I
social media is good.
I actually met their team that does the mayor's office's uh all of their broadcast. I guess all of the good stuff they're doing um for their uh I met them at GDC earlier this year. I would love to be in New York City right now. I have some friends that want me to visit Boston first.
Boston is a bit boring compared to New York, but yeah, if you have
That's
friends there.
true.
I used to go to Macworld there in the back of the day. Did any of you go to Macworld? You're
Never had the
such
money for it.
such disappointments. I was at Syracuse University with, well, not with Peter Osilko, but also where Peter was, and I would drive to Boston all night. I would have the full experience, and I'd drive home, pull over to the side of the road, sleep for a couple hours, and keep driving. Student days. Yeah.
There's
Hello,
there's
Bert.
a there's a maker space in Boston called Anvil um, that I have some friends at.
That's cool.
Mhm.
Peter, oh yeah, Eric and Tom, did I run for you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm messing with other things.
All right.
I have in the process of transitioning computers at the moment, so I'm still making sure things work on this one.
Yeah, that's important. How about you, Eric?
Okay, it unzipped, and now I'm trying to find the applications folder where it needs to
Command
go.
Shift A, man.
Okay, thank you.
Mm.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, downloaded.
Right.
Origami text not open. Apple could not verify origami text is free of malware that may harm your Mac or can compromise your privacy.
What
You have to
OS
do
are you running, Tom?
control. Let's see.
The latest I just updated.
26 or 27?
What is it? I can never keep them straight. Um, I am on Tahoe 26, 6.2.
That's really interesting. Okay,
Yeah, I
anybody
got the
else have
same
success?
message. The same message that he got.
Okay, I'm going to security and privacy. Let's see if it'll let me green light it. Open
Uh,
anyway.
That's okay. I'm trying to go through the normal means as well, but it would have been fun.
Okay, she's up and running. So I just had to go to privacy and security. Down the bottom, it asked if I wanted to run it. Way down, had to scroll down a little bit. And I'm currently running beta 3 or 4, whatever the most recent beta is for Golden Gate.
Okay, yeah, me too. I'm on that. All right, I'll see if I can get it across. So, okay, all of that. So I don't know who else is coming today. Let me just check.
Okay, I got it to open the same way.
Cool.
But obviously, you don't want that happening if normals have to use it because they will give up at that point or run
Oh,
away
yeah.
and hide.
Yeah. No, this is not for normals. This is only community. Only community, because we got to design this together. So yeah, I had a meeting with Marius, who is one of the lead people in the hypertext conference and hypertext community this weekend. Well, this week, last week, and it was in Battersea, lovely place. Had a coffee, talked through what needs to be done. There are frustrations, of course, in academia about how we deal with our knowledge. No surprise there. So he was enthusiastic with the notion of origami text, and for the record, origami text is simply defined as EPUBs, which visually follow strict basic EPUB guidelines. You're not allowed to add any frippery because that ruins compatibility, and a ton of metadata in the HTML and in JSON. That's it. So we're going to have a bit of a working group around this, so we can show it off at the symposium in September, the Hypertext Symposium. And I've got a few documents downloaded from him and from Mark. So that's the context to start our discussion today. Peter Demetrius is joining. Good. Hello, Peter.
Hey there, guys.
Hey, how are you?
It's doing good. It's supposed to have an air conditioner replaced today, but the thing doesn't fit. It's 10 years old, and the new part is just a little bit off. So they got to get a new. I'm not going to have air conditioning up here in my office for another few days.
Frustrating.
At least it's cooler here right now.
Yeah, no, well, mornings are good. Hello, Vincent. Can you hear us? Hey, yeah,
There you
I hear
are.
you, Vincent. Hello. Oh, can't hear you.
Ta-da! How about that?
Yeah, that's better.
Now I'm
Uh,
here.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that I had a meeting with Marius last week regarding the Hypertext Symposium. We're setting up a working group. We call it, to be very pretentious and fancy, the Advanced Documents Working Group, Origami Text, right? Got to have a fancy name to it. So what we have, Vincent, is maybe relevant to a lot of your education work because we hope it'll be the substrate for future knowledge sharing. And I'm a very document-centric person because I think it's really important to own the knowledge, not just to have it on a server. So the notion that I think everybody else knows is oh, here's Brandel. Hey, Brandel. And oh, Brandel's got a haircut. Looking sharp. So, yeah, I was just in the middle of a brief summary. So I had a meeting with Marius regarding the hypertext conference coming up and the approach for a new document standard. And of course, we've talked about EPUB a lot. So what we call origami text, which is not a brand name for the public, it's kind of it's an approach more than a format or a standard, is simply you're not allowed to make it flashy with all kinds of visual things because then compatibility with readers break. But you can add a ton of metadata in the HTML and in the JSON. So that's the whole thing. So I've now built origami text for macOS, which hopefully should be available for early experimentalists very, very soon. And of course, something for Vision OS. So I'll show you a little bit of that now, kind of like a demo, and then hopefully we'll get into a more interesting discussion with what we actually want out of this stuff. Right. So while I get ready for that, anybody have any questions?
I'm trying to open an EPUB right now.
Okay.
It's a big one though, so we'll see how it works.
My commentary on it is thinking about document as being, you're telling a story, you're trying to get some linearization so that we as humans aren't just scattered around a bunch of wiki pages or navigating nodes randomly, which is an okay way to explore knowledge. But when you say document, it's like writing a paper. You want conclusion, you want some screenplay to lead you through the material rather than a video game where you're wandering around.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's two different styles. And I think that's where your focus on document is really good. It keeps you from turning it into everything into a video game kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even though the substrate might be that, but you want to thread through it that's actually a little bit of leading or a little bit of engineering to make it sensible or make a few sensible paths through it at least.
Yes, I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with wikis, for instance, for sure. I'm just going to make sure I'm ready for. The point is that some things should be like we're doing now, live. Some things should be malleable. Other things should be, here's a statement in the world, read it in flexible ways, and you can be sure that if you cite it, it will be there. So, Peter, we're absolutely on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
So this is an important start. So here we have InterAtlas, which is recently coded for Mac, iOS, and Vision OS, which is important. So you can choose, let's just go to layers. We'll turn on sea lane flights and ocean currents. So these things are now visible. You can see the currents are animated, right? So that's cool. Most of you have seen it. And then we go export image. So it exports it as a PNG. And then we will just close that down. And we go into author, obviously. We take that image and we drag it in like so. That's it. If you click on it, then you will see there's notes and all kinds of extra information. But now we export this and, it has headings and whatever to EPUB. And it says origami here at the bottom. It's not really for people to think about other than nerds like us. Then we go to, I'm running two origami text here, so let me just create a new one. So I can't see you guys, gotta bring you back. So here it is, open that up. So here it shows up, it's all very simple, very clear. At the bottom, we have similar controls to what we have in Author, because what I'm trying to sell, and I know I don't have to sell it to you guys because you get it, but you can have similar controls while reading as you have while authoring. So you can do outline, obviously, but if you then click on overview, outline plus first sentence, or outline plus what you have highlighted for annotation of the document. You can also choose to see citations. This one doesn't really have it properly. All kinds of views. You can also have a horizontal view like this, make it full screen. Hoping it doesn't crash. Oh, it crashed. Great. I'll do the previous build then. Actually, we will do, this is really important for what we're going to go through today. We have here journals, and this is just a test. So the journal coming up, I have only 3 friendly documents to test with. So here you can see the column view that we looked at. So you can skip through that. So if you have a really big display, like most of you have when you're at your desk, it's available. You click on a citation, and even if the citation didn't have an abstract, it'll go online and find the abstracts. So the whole point of this is to allow you to do the normal stuff of you're at a conference. First, you got to find out what papers you want to read, which are relevant to you. And then you need different ways to read them, right? So here, you can do things like top of pile, which puts a little, it's now called pin, by the way. Or you can choose to set aside, which makes it gray and hides it. Very basic initial stuff. We also, because we're moving into XR, we're also doing the opposite. If you print out any of these papers, and then you hold up the, I don't have it in this build, but if you then click hold up page, you hold up the printed paper, the camera will come on and it'll do an OCR and it'll search your library. If you have that document, it'll open that document to that page. And we're trying to make it so if you have any underlines, they will also be seen as annotations, right? So trying to do, without prejudice, all the different layers. And of course you have a list of authors, all the normal stuff is in here. Any questions before I put on the headset? So it looks quite normal, right?
I had one question about in the globe. So I'm assume you're familiar with the way that a clipboard clipboard contents can be multivariate, so that they are represented in text and they're represented in other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So does that mean what you're pasting, what the effective artifact you're pasting in is HTML into your document, or?
Sorry for all these crash quittings and stuff, but last night we did I'm going to answer you, Randall. Last night I did a new layout style in XR and it completely ruined everything. I spent the whole entire evening. I got so annoyed at Claude. But here's one of the things about coding with AI. They can neither take responsibility nor have any sense of, oh, I'm sorry, I messed up. So that's kind of what we're saying. What we're doing here with this, when we're doing this EPUB, it's not using the clipboard. It is, all the metadata is in the EXIF of the PNG. That's where you normally would have camera information, lens information, stuff like that, right? So what you'll be able to do, and it's right in the middle of development, so it doesn't work this second, it looks like. But the point is, that was a 3D environment we took a picture from. All the stuff that you need to reconstitute that 3D environment is in the PNG written out. Let me just try this. I'm going to export it in a different way. Yeah, please go on.
So I think of this in the copy paste like OLE, the old Windows, object link embedding kind of stuff, where you're pasting in, you got a PNG version of it, but you got the linked version that knows how to go to the app and bring up your 3D viewer or whatever it is. This is different than that. You're saving meta information that some other tool might be able to parse out of the EXIF or the JSON to recreate that 3D view in the headset or wherever it is, whatever you're.
Yeah, the sort of modern inheritance of OLE is probably app intents.
Yeah,
where
that's what I'm trying to say. It's the modern equivalent.
Yeah. Yes.
So. So there's standard. I don't know. I haven't looked at it in years. But what the standards are now for clipboard contents and. The tags that are in there versus the stuff that's in the content that's in the clipboard, the JSON, the EXIF. I mean, that's the stuff that's really useful for your tool, but is there any kind of, I haven't looked at what's standardized there in the clipboard metadata that isn't buried inside the content of the clipboard.
It's not using, this process doesn't use the clipboard in that sense. However,
okay.
What is very important from what you're saying is when you choose to cite. So if you are, I'll just try to run it briefly here. If you're reading a PDF, oh, sorry, PDF, there you go. That's a Freudian slip. If you're reading a document like this and you want to cite, right? Copy as citation. That is now copied as pure BibTeX. Because it's easy to cheat and do cool things, but the cost of that is compatibility with other people's systems. So what it does is it uses note and annotation in those fields that may not be used everywhere else. But that means that you can copy, for instance, from Zotero into this, or the other way around. So it becomes quite open. Look at the way it's talking here. The image is modest. This looks rather sane. Great, whatever. Anyway, I will not put on the headsets, but I'm telling you that the Mac side of it is relatively dry in the sense that it's supposed to drive what an academic needs when they're going through a bunch of new proceedings. One of them is, of course, annotations. So it's using the web standard for that hypothesis and so on, uses it. This is so that we can have all the stuff ready to do more Brandl-like experiments of literal magic type carpets and so on in the headset. So yesterday, having spent the entire evening trying to figure out why we lost all the nodes, I threw away everything, and we started today with the basis of what we had in Author. So let me just share here. So it's finally got an icon. That's the, see, it's a folded book, origami-ish. So it's very minimalist. It's all about, to reiterate, you're reading a set of proceedings. You go here. So we have just 3. The one at the bottom has been labeled set aside. That's why it's gray. I'm tapping on this one. And then everything it cites is here, which may or may not be useful. Yeah, do this one. Get everything. It's all interactive. And the thing is, I can do this. Hang on, there's a bit, yeah. So when I do this, it flattens it because it by default, by time. So the newest document, you can see at 2003 is closest. Let me, yeah, no, I don't need to do that. 1991 is there. So it's a very crude way of saying, oops, whether you want to see things like a wall or whether you want to see it, so you walk into it, right? I don't think this is particularly useful yet, but it is quite fun. And we need fun to start going further, right? So I'm going to deselect that one. So only the citations that are in one of these documents appear, otherwise it's just too much. And it is supposed to, oh yeah, here you go. You see this? It does, because we use Crossref and other sources, we can actually get the citations that these other documents do. So this is probably the most basic thing we could possibly do. And I think that's a useful place to start.
But I like the time, having the time, the newer ones closer kind of thing, even though that doesn't necessarily mean better in terms of papers, but at least you can see. That's a good view when you're going through a mass of citations to figure out, seminal papers from way back when versus modern AI generated slop or whatever.
Yeah, that's the whole point. That's exactly, now I'm going to go back to reality here. But that's the whole point. The point is to, we are an experimental group. So I'm just trying to say happy stuff to Xcode. But in order to do happy stuff and experimental stuff, we need to have the clay to work with. And it's been years and years we talked about that. And I consider myself an inventor, and it's fun to invent something complicated. We can all do that. It's more useful to invent as little as possible because change is really, really expensive. So that's why what now works on the Mac and anywhere, because it's just an EPUB, is that simple thing. It's the simplest visual display. We can put whatever the heck metadata we want in there, partly because AIs can help other systems read it if it wasn't clear to begin with. So today is the first day I can say to you guys that in the headset, we have I didn't even show you, I didn't want to waste your time, but all the reading affordances of the document, you have that, you open it up. You can scroll, you can see it multiple, you can do searches, you can do all the stuff you can do on your Mac is there, and it comes to me at very low cost as a developer. Now, actually doing the whole system has cost me quite a few £1,000s. So it's a real project. It's not like a one-shot toy thing. But now we can talk about what to do, and we can check it with real stuff. Eric.
Yeah, so this reminds me of a demo that Ted Nelson had called Xanadu Space. And what that was, it was OpenGL, and he was reading one main document, and behind it there were 10 other related documents. And then as he moved down, he would highlight a paragraph, and the transclusion would fly up in his face, and you could see the connection. And you could have like two, one on each side of the main document. And I think that would be pretty cool to see it as you're reading, or just a way of showing that the connections in the text.
I completely agree. That's exactly the kind of thing. I hate saying that. I sound like a politician. That's exactly one of the things we have to do. Right. So the system now supports our modern style transclusion, not TED's, because that was database driven and it was literally the same stuff, but it supports similar. So it supports high resolution addressing, it supports stretch text. So all these things are there. And if we, until September, when the conference is, and this is just going to be a little demo on the side, this is not a major thing at all. But if we here in the community can think of, I'm at a conference, put the headset on, what should I read and how should I deal with it becomes interesting. And Brandel, just to tell everyone else, the model element, I'm obviously hoping to integrate in the same way as we have the other visual things. So on a 2D thing, you have a 2D thing. Because if I may say in a congratulatory sense to you, Brandel, a model element is as simple as it can get. It's in the HTML to say, here's a really cool 3D thing. Don't worry about it if you're not viewing 3D. But in the EPUB package, it can be there. So
have you experienced model element in a web page like that in macOS?
no, I haven't. And I would like some links to really good experimental pages for that if I could have that.
Yeah, I would like that too. There's only really the blog posts that I've written about it. We're coming out with a blog post that pertains only to public information to kind of describe it. That I think will be really constructive. But yeah, because it's only because Safari 27 is only in developer previews right now. It hasn't really taken off in terms of people noticing what they can do with it.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important because the model element is a doorway to so much, right? And the experimental thing I'm doing with the InterAtlas stuff is PNGs, should probably be model elements. If I could teach, actually, Randall, maybe you can send me stuff so I can teach my system how to export as a model element. Maybe that's a cleaner route.
Yeah, I mean, anything that if you're using a reality kit scene, then it should be possible to ask it to export to USDZ, and anything that is a USDZ should be a valid model element. So if you're using it in AR Quick Look or anything like that, it's the same format and the same sort of capabilities. Modulo, a couple of things to do with some bright ideas people had in 2019 about adding tap targets and scenes and stuff like that, sort of trying to leap ahead to making it more like HyperCard than was probably advisable. But yeah.
I'm just going to run this so you guys can see the style of how we do this stuff. I mean, I think it's absolutely nuts being able to do this. And now I'm going to say, Brandel suggests that we export US, sorry, what, US?
DZ.
Yeah, do Z. But that is not an image, a 2D preview as well at the same time, right?
Well, uh, every Apple platform knows how to render a USD send.
Okay, so we're just going to do that now then.
Now, Frode,
Yeah.
I sent you a EPUB document generated by ChatGPT, which had a placeholder image and a 3D model. So it should fall back to the placeholder image. Is that an approach that could be taken?
You're talking about here.
Yeah, if you download that EPUB, let's see if you can open it.
So, Vincent, you are rarely here, and I'm grateful you are here today. So let me push a little bit on why we're doing this like this, and it looks like we're suddenly just in building mode. The point is, the basic point this all comes from is knowledge, at least to an extent, is about connections, right? Our media, therefore, should support connections. And by connections, I think we all also means interactions, not just what goes to what. So, what Brandel, being a super top world expert on this, is helping is we stay with text. We have multiple ways to expand it. One of the things that actually highly relevant, I'll show you guys real quick, because this is also about the ridiculous new way of programming with LLMs, Xcode. So I built a 3D app. I mean, for me to have said that 6 months ago would have been just stupidest thing. It can import things, so I can say, first of all, the shape of thing it should have, and this is about information. That it's not just So I can say requests, and then I help it with a little bit of what kind of data it is. If it needs a follow-up question, it'll do that. So here we have rain. We have different stats, populations. So this is really, really rough, and it's not a working environment, but it's something Vint Cerf sent me a message about, so I built it partly for him. Point is, anybody who builds this should be able to export that data in a way that goes flat into the document and then back out. Because one thing that is really cool, and we'll see about the builds of the other things, is in Author, I've always had a problem with tables. My programmers, human ones, have never been able to do it right because of the way the Apple environment is. It's just always been a mess. Claude, who sometimes mess up, managed to make a really nice table. So then, just for the heck of it, I said, can you make it live with equations? So it's actually a spreadsheet. And it said, sure, and it did. When you now export that to EPUB, it stays live. So when we talk about Jupyter notebooks and that kind of thing, that is eminently possible to have an EPUB now. So you can have all these equations, all this live stuff, change it, it'll stay changed because it's saved as an annotation, and you can click a button to get back to the original numbers. So that's why how to deal with 3D stuff, flat and expanded, is a really core thing. Right.
But I'm questioning, what is it actually exporting? Is it a 3D model or the PNG plus EXIF data? Is it
The way it works now is it's a PNG with EXIF saying what the application needs to reconstitute the scene. So it says these are the layers, this is the point of view, this is the scale, these are the angles. So it's literally how to recreate it. The idea being you are a scientist of some sort. You have a visualization of some sort, just like you would have a spreadsheet. So you put the spreadsheet in and it's live, cool. But let's say you have molecules or the earth or whatever it might be. What you put in is both a visual and also the way that the person reading it can say, I'm sorry, I think this is rubbish. I'm going to go through it myself. And you have lost none of the interactivity. That's the point of it. By the way, Brandel, can you see on the screen here? It's arguing with you.
Right. I have to zoom in. Where's the zoom? Where's the zoom?
Sorry, I don't even know how to zoom it here, but it says reality can export to reality, not USDZ.
Right. That seems like a shame. Um, you could, well, if you can, depends on what you're building. You could build it as through USD kit instead, but yes. Uh, the
Yeah. Yeah, I'm Googling to see because I don't know if I trust that response. Oh,
yeah,
seems
I mean,
valid.
USD supports Material X in the to the exact same extent in Vision as as Reality Kit does as well. So that point about what it can't capture cleanly. Animated content you can animate in USD as well, and anything driven by live data, yes. But that's because it's the difference there is not so much whether it's Reality versus USD as uh, a Reality Kit object wouldn't be able to do that either. That's to do with being a runtime versus a data format. Uh, so it's plausible that the reality file is the only export target there, but that may also be a feature of construction. So it's a possibility that there could be small tweaks to how these things are composed in order to make it so that they sort of stay as full-time USD rather than sort of jumping to that. It means that you would sort of essentially write them and unwrap them, and then they would be USD in reality in Vision. But yeah,
So this is crazy as well. I'm not now asking it. The Liquid Information app, which is a very simple graph app, can we do that? Can we do it there? And also, can we build something to do it? Because chances are it can. I mean, this is what I find is very, very interesting for this period of time in history. To do an incredibly graphics intensive thing is often easier than to do a simple HyperCard thing because it has training data for that. It has graphics for that. When it's dealing with knowledge, because bizarre to our community, very few people have bothered to do that properly. It's such new territory. So hopefully we can use some of that graphic stuff to help with the understanding stuff. Okay, so Brandel, let's see now.
isn't Model I/O on Vision as well?
What did you say?
I would presume that Model I/O is an API available on Vision as well.
Not available on Vision, it says. That's weird. Okay.
Yeah, no, it like anyway, I don't. It's not necessary to derail the conversation here, but yeah, it does definitely seem like Model I/O is available on VisionOS 1.0 plus. It came out with our first one. Yeah, no, cool. I mean, if it's possible, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the thing that you're displaying there, in terms of things like the clouds, it is right that there would be significant additional challenges to doing that. But even just having a globe with the positional data kind of transported onto it via a USD would be really interesting and effective to be able to kind of play with. So yeah, no, I look forward to what comes out of that.
Yeah, I'll keep working on that offline, but now we're all hello, Benja. We were doing the origami stuff again that you've seen most of, and now I have an app that can be used, but I'm having problems getting it runnable on macOS because of it's in beta thing and so on. Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I was wondering, what's the PDF import story on Origami Text? I tried pulling in a paper and it showed up briefly, but then I couldn't find it. It didn't list in the library. When I tried to go back to the library, it was sort of like sitting in some sort of an invisible draft mode where I couldn't find again.
It's awful. and it was done to populate. But for me personally, it's good that it's awful. It kind of proves our point in a way, because if that was easy and clean, then what's the point of changing the format? But what we do have, Peter, that you may find amusing is we have an importer for origami text from Overleaf LaTeX.
Interesting.
Yeah, let me tell everyone actually why that is hugely interesting. ACM, they take it's absolutely nuts. If you want to have an article published, it has to be in LaTeX. So it's like you have to engineer it. It's more complicated than doing it in raw HTML, right? It's absolutely nuts. So I got a few papers from friends, including Mark Anderson, who's the world expert on these things. So now we can take what people are already contributing to a conference as a zip file, open that up, it'll get the references correct, images, tables, all of that stuff is there. So in terms of production, there's no difference. It's just instead of reading it as a flat PDF or a very bad HTML.
Also, is there any way to bring BibTeX references directly into Origami? Because I had one on the clipboard and there was no paste option to try to pull it in.
It depends how you want it, Peter, and it's a very good question because you would probably want it to be associated with references in the body of a document.
Yep.
So with the site tags and all of that stuff. So if you can figure out exactly how the pasting would work, I would love to look into that. I just haven't managed that logic yet.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so for the undying entertainment of all of you, I've now gone through the USDC thing a little bit. So I'm saying, yeah, let's build it from liquid information. And it needs to have text for a model element. We can paste into HTML. Okay, so let's just see if that happens. So hopefully it can do the 3D and we can put things together. So I'm hoping that the feeling you guys are getting now is an excitement around, holy moly, we can do stuff. Now, everything that I'm building today is freely available on GitHub, so you can take all of it. It's done in a style where there's views, so if you only want to build a separate view and just use everything we've built together, fine, do that. It's no longer, the world we're in is no longer beta, demo, or whatever we want to call it. We can do pretty close to production stuff now. What do you mean, Brandl? I saw that. We can.
You can build prototypes really quickly. The kind of coding that you need to do in order to make sure that something is not going to fall over when 70 million people look at it at once is not vibe codable.
Oh, but my dear friend, I would say there's a difference here. If you're talking about something on a web server, of course, scale is a very different thing. But if we're talking about production of a piece of downloadable code, you don't have the scaling crush in the same way. So
oh no, I wrote the weather app for Dell for a couple of years, and the kinds of things the kinds of trouble you get in because 0.4% of people experience some weird bug that is still your fault. It still takes up literal person weeks of customer support time that can cost the company hundreds of thousands of dollars for every day that it goes on.
yeah, I completely agree with you, Brandl. But the thing is, I mean, you're sitting in the company that made this possible. So this is like a fun, polarized discussion here. I got an email from a user complaining that Author was slowed down with the latest update. So I immediately said this to Claude and Xcode, and it found out what the bottlenecks were and massively improved the product. So, when you come across a bug, it's the weird thing. Some of it, Xcode, Claude just can't do. If I'm asking it to move something to the side, often it just can't do that. But if I want to have literally all universe, give me 20 minutes and it's done. But all of InterAtlas and Brandl, I want to see you in there. It's shipping now. You can use it. It's a normal one. All of it is done with Claude and Xcode. You know, it's got hundreds of thousands of stars in there, and it works. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. Yeah, so I'm going to ask a few of you, starting with you, Vincent. You've written so much and you've analyzed so much, and you and Tom, I think, are in a very similar loop, which is super lovely. And of course, you both met. What are the kinds of things you would like to equip the modern student slash academic with that might inspire us to actually build for that?
Well, I just come back from Herculaneum, and I spent a couple of days absolutely absorbed in it, as anybody would. But I was so fascinated by the graffiti, the language that was left behind, the messages that people left on the walls of that, and a very small place just off Herculaneum. But I found this book of 250 graffitis that were left on the walls, and they were people writing text to one another. They were text in the. They weren't the scrolls. They weren't the 12 tables. They weren't come from official documentation, etc. And it wasn't just I had a crap here or I made love to such and such here and stuff. But there was a huge amount of where language and text had become the daily thing. It had become it was, I kind of realized, sort of zooming out and looking at what was left of Herculaneum, that it was the best version they had of social media, of communicating with one another across without having to write individual letters, etc. And then I managed to find this incredibly great book by a professor called Vincent Hunnock, who's actually put together all of what these messages were saying. And he's tried to put them into context. So sometimes people are alluding to a poet, or they're coming up with alluding to an old myth or things like that, which were all these connections of, oh, okay, so they were using these when they were communicating one another. They were using this language, sort of hypertext that they could understand. Oh, he's alluding to Ovid. Oh, she's putting an old verse from Lesbos or what have you, and whoever read it would be able to go, okay, I understand that. And I realize that when you walk around Herculaneum and you have your headset which tells you, but what it doesn't do is highlight the graffiti that's written on the wall beside the beautiful mosaics, the actual bits of, no, this was people living their everyday lives. And everything you've spoken about here, that idea of being able to put on, to see it in 3D, to connect and go, okay, this was in the context of they were in the midst of a famine or a grain crisis was happening, and they were quoting Ovid. And anybody who walks around, you saw so many tourists and so many people are visiting these places, but they can only put it into the context of kind of the very traditional tourist side of what's given to you. But that idea of, oh no, this was happening in the Roman Empire at the time. This was what Claudius was doing. This was the grain that was being allowed here. Suddenly gives you this massive download of information when you suddenly realize, oh, okay, this was in the midst of an enormous greater Roman Empire that was hugely facilitating information, etc. And it brought it to life in such a bigger oomph. And it was that I saw, that you could see, if you could witness it in a more than a kind of a 3D side and go, okay, this wasn't just, yes, it was a beautiful, they have all the preserved banisters. This is the most incredibly preserved Roman city that's ever been. But suddenly you realize in the bigger context, because you get this influx of information, that it can say, No, you have to realize this was in the midst of this, etc. I just felt it massively added to. I feel like I might have lost a lot of you. Sorry, guys.
Oh, I think you've lost us in thought. I mean, one of the things that it brings in is the importance of context, obviously, but also timeline. I mean,
Mm,
Brendel has built several XR timelines, starting quite a long time ago. And having gone through building the Earth, the inside of the Earth, the oceans, the atmosphere, satellites, the solar system, the Oort cloud, and all visible stars in the universe, having done that successfully because it exists, it's easy to transfer something that exists, right? Can we figure out a generalizable way to have a timeline as a hook, right? Wouldn't it be great to be able to do an XR experience where you knew that timeline means something? Like we have a model element. Can we have a time element?
So yes, there's a temporal object in JavaScript. I'm not sure whether we have HTML equivalents, but there's been a lot of discussion. Time is actually a lot harder than people who are only casually sort of brushing up against it. It's like surely it's easy to declare a date in UTC, but no, not really. In terms of what it just displays versus what it means and what you mean by it. So I think from the perspective of the web, it would be really good to have something that represents sort of intrinsically a date and a time and possibly sort of hints or opinions about the time horizon over which it is relevant as well. And I've often thought that, one of the most important things that we could add to the web is time and space. So geospatial coordinates as a first class kind of entity is a really important sort of candidate. And so at the same time as you've been, well, actually, yeah, at the same time as you've been playing with your globe stuff, Broda, I've been playing with Wikipedia and extracting all of the lat long data from that, so that you can kind of have a one-to-one correspondence between what you're looking at and where it is, and things like that. But in that same way, yeah, I think that sort of those things, there ought to be bedrock standards of a kind that says not just that this is a number that represents a time, but that this is a time, in such a way as people can then expect to kind of deal with it as a time as they see fit, and sort of see that as kind of a requisite task that's incumbent on them as a consequence of dealing with basic data. I don't have any really good evidence that people have picked that up as a thing that is sort of one of the critical tasks for us with computing today. But I feel like we could start that process off here. But no, Vincent, sorry, I was looking up Herculaneum to know sort of a little bit about where it is or what became of it, in order to kind of contextualize what you were talking about. And yeah, I think that the sort of there's a mundaneness and a mystery to being able to see things as they are and as people experience them and things like that, and understand how big or small things are. That I first experienced when I put on a headset after trying to design something for 3D printing, and just realizing how flimsy the pieces were. And no amount of actually looking at it on the screen really gave me that visceral sense of what those pieces were or what they did. And so I absolutely believe that the more you can kind of get into a situated, because there's the other thing, if you haven't experienced this much, I'm afraid I'm not familiar with your background, is that there is a situatedness where you can kind of view your, like, where we are right now watching Froda's globe is nowhere, and it's not even sort of, it doesn't even matter, like where are we and how close we are to it is sort of not a thinkable question. But when you're looking at an object in stereoscopic view in headset, then you are responsible for positioning yourself. You are there, and there's not that same sort of philosophical anonymity, essentially. And so there's a sort of an intrinsic voyeurism to it that is not bad, but it is sort of inextricable, that I think would be really, really potent in Herculaneum as well. That is
So,
awesome, Frodo.
while you're talking, Brandel, thank you, Brandel, I appreciate that. This is time. of course, these two visuals are very different, but this is the best scientifically available and open source data for the last 500 million years of our planet. Right, and what is it's really cool. I'm very glad that I have it. I'm very proud of the app, but it's also, let's put it this way, a little perverse that it's just a darn slider. Like, come on, time is more important than that. You know, Randall, you have you have time as a carpet, you have time as a corridor. We need to find out ways to do this without just going into ownership, right? So how do I dismiss this now? Oh, I have to turn it off, don't I? This is optimized obviously for the headset, so the controls on the side are a bit clunky, but yeah, how do we do time? Because here, sorry, this is the other time. That's why that was one time. But so if you look at the currents, obviously that is not real motion, but it's time being used to indicate direction, right? And we can do overview lines. So these are the main currents. Of course, we're getting into a bad El Nino, so that counts. That's about these guys here, isn't it? One more thing to show you before I turn this off. Let's go to oceans level. These are the migrations of actual whales. So we'll do. So these are tagged, and that's real data for different kinds of whales, the different colors. You know, it would be nice maybe to have a scrubber here to see them move. But yeah, this is almost endless, and it's kind of in a way eye candy unless you're a scientist in that area. So how do we approach Herculaneum? I think that's a great example, Vincent. I am very, very excited by the forum in Rome for similar reasons. How do we put time and context into it?
Absolutely, and I know it's there's difficulty to grasp, but they were the first. I work with precision engineer companies, and I make the joke to them and say that Rome was it was a lot of very self-contained blowhards until the engineers turned up and went, no, we could expand here, we can do this, we can do the roads, we can do the aqueducts, and suddenly they could break out from their area. But it's saying that now, especially with AI, that now these are the engineering companies who are starting to really get into it and starting to understand how much you can communicate. So many of them, I have an organization, I have a business I'm working with at the moment. They have been one of the world's leading precision engineer on rubber testing for 70 years. And they have accumulated enormous amounts of data. But they were, as engineers are, skeptical about what AI could do. But now they've suddenly come on board. They are absolutely whole. It's crazy watching these guys who work at lathes at micron levels, who have suddenly gone, yeah, okay, now that can work. Now we can bring this on board. Now we can start doing things with this. And suddenly you realize, okay, so this is genuinely the rubber hits the road when things start to expand into the actual physical world. So I think it's the same way with the same way they've tried that they're starting to incorporate the text, that the way that they talk to one another, the way they communicate within their organizations, within their various different departments, and they're suddenly finding a language as a way to define precision and definition. And it's amazing to watch what they're doing now, how they're actually using these things, and they're able to, like good engineers always do, they test it first, they test it until it breaks, and then they'll go, okay, what else can we do with it? What else can we do? And they're starting to look into how can we look at this in 3D? How can we look at this in spatial spaces? How can we play with our various different tiny little the engineering scope that they put things together, and they can talk with these things, and you suddenly realize, they're incorporating language now because they can actually play with it in a different space. They can move things around, move it around, which they've always had to do physically in workshops. And
Yeah.
now they can start to, without that feeling, and they had for the first few years of AI that it was it was a little bit of a novelty, it was a game. Now that there's some background behind it, they can start to say, okay, we can do things with it. And you suddenly see them making incredible moves forward with this stuff. So again, I'm waffling, sorry, gents.
The physical world is definitely exciting with this stuff too. We've seen what's he called again? I forget his name. Projections on tables.
Oof.
Reality, no, what's his well, he used to work at Apple. We all know him, his work. Where you move, you have kind of an icon on a table, you move and it's tracked. I'll think of it, but yeah, I mean, obviously now see you later, Randall. Obviously now we're at a point where potentially these things can actually produce data for 3D production systems as well. What do we call it? The additive stuff we can do at home. So obviously Tom is very provocative. He said he wanted sharks, so now we're looking at how to do sharks on here. Okay.
Whales won't eat you.
Well, I only found out last week that orcas are known as killer whales because they actually kill and eat whales.
Yeah. And primarily seals, but yes.
Oh, yeah, also whales, especially gray whales. Right. Benja, you've been very focused, and we're very happy to hear you here. And I'm wondering if you have any additions, perspectives, or things.
Nothing tremendously relevant. Haven't really done anything in the VR, AR world. I'm a web-based programmer. I'm working on a demo for what I'd like to be next week's session. So yeah, I've been looking up some stuff on inline comments, what it would look like to do graffiti on text or within a chat app, but just a subset of a message. And then also comments behind it as well. So I guess there's a 3D nature to it, but yeah, I don't know how relevant it is to the discussion, but it was exciting to hear. Vincent, you talk about graffiti over at Herculaneum. I also was looking up Herculaneum and starting to drift around there as well.
Cool.
The thing.
Oh, nice, Eric. Cool.
You talked. The thing that Eric and I've been doing a little bit, we had this for a while. We had digital letters as a thing. Jason's we sent back and forth. And now, Vincent, you're ruining everything by talking about writing on the wall, quite physically, right? There are so many dimensions to communicative writing. There's so many dimensions to writing for thinking. And even though we need to focus on something, they do need to work together. I mean, I would love to be able to be at Herculaneum, see something cool, take a picture of it, write a note, and have that exist in a manner through which, when I write a paper in the future, it's properly contextualized and accessible.
Would you all say, I know that everyone comes from a different background, but most of you kind of thinking about when you capture data from anywhere? Are you thinking about like, oh, I want to store this away like almost like an acorn, as if you're a squirrel, so that later on, when you're writing a paper or when you're writing something, you can reference it? Is there any other, is that fair to call that the primary reason that you would store things away? I don't know if that's obvious or not.
I got a bit distracted there. I just saw a message. Can you please repeat that? I'm so sorry.
Acorns. Yeah, something like, is the primary purpose of storing context, like you said about like taking a picture, at Herculaneum and being able to reference that in a paper that you're writing. is the primary purpose of storing a little blurb of information so that you can reference it or point at it while you're writing something, say a paper or a message?
So I've done a lot of studies through AI while doing this, as in looking at the cognitive science behind reading, writing, and annotating, right? When people annotate for themselves, it tends to be quite rough. Highlighting doesn't really work very much. Writing it separately and the margins are somewhere else, because it uses your brain, has a much higher retention and learning rates. But when people export or share their annotations with others, it changes quite a lot. People pay more attention to what it is because they expect someone to read it. So within the work here, at least from my perspective, if you do an annotation where there's an expectation of sharing, you will put in more effort to clean it up and maybe remember it. So there's a balance between making it easy and making it clear for someone else, right? It's also laziness. I don't want to write stuff that if I don't expect that I'll ever want to read it again.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. No, there are just a ton of different dimensions to it. The whole writing for thinking aspect is very fascinating because I'm putting a tremendous amount of information that I'm expressing down, but I may never look at that again. Um, yeah, I'm almost like wishing for defined terminology for those different dimensions. I'm probably very light compared to the other members in this group on reading kind of core text to this problem space.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are, especially in the academic world, are talking about writing as thinking, and it's one form of thinking. That's the thing. We're used to it being the only form, because that's the way the entire academic enterprise has been structured up to this point. But it's not the only form. And, any of us, well, those of us who've been in a classroom realize that uh, there are a lot of other ways in which you have to be able to hit your students that are outside of writing, and that writing is actually one of the more difficult forms for them to be able to do because they have to master the idea of writing in the first place and being able to express themselves in any way before they can get to that higher level of using writing for that higher level thinking. And so if you can't assemble a paragraph or a sentence, or you can't spell or whatever, then doing that higher level Bloom's taxonomy stuff with writing is hard. It's a really hard climb for my students, particularly. And so one of the frustrations I have is, yeah, I'm used to using writing as thinking, but I come at this in a very different way than my students do. And I've read a lot more than my students have, even when I was a student. um, and so that's a tough thing is, the skill set of writing versus the skill set of thinking are not the same. They're not equal. And so, yeah, we have to relook at all of these mechanisms and how they work. Everybody's like, oh, well, nobody reads and writes anymore. I'm like, have you looked at social media in the last 20 years? I mean, people write scads of stuff. But it's not necessarily thinking, right? And that's the difference. It's unthinking writing in many cases, and that's also what gets people into trouble. We've all done it. But yeah, I think that's one thing to bear in mind is that one of the things that is kind of a focus of this group is also the idea that visual is also a form of thinking, and that writing is a partner in that, but it's not this sole mechanism. And writing and text force you into a linear pathway. In every book, every article has a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's just the nature of how text flows. When that doesn't happen anymore, then now you start to expose the thinking or lack thereof, because sometimes the story is good enough to cover the fact that there's not a lot of thinking going on. But once you start breaking that down in the way we've been talking about for the last several years into chunks of ideas, then you suddenly see the emperor with no clothes if there's nothing there. And I think a lot of times also complexity of writing. One of the things that I like to do with AI is I'll get an article that's in some field that I'm not really well versed in, and then say, what the hell is this about? Is it any good? And that sort of thing. Because I don't do the complex math and stuff that, computational science or physics or something, or biology are doing. And I don't, this is a way that people have always used to exclude other people from the conversation as well. And this is, of course, I'm going to put on my Michel Foucault hat for a moment there, but language is power, and it's a way of controlling. If you control the dialogue, and everybody has their own little secret words, and that these are a way of solidifying your group's power over people who are on the in group versus the out group. And this has always been the case. And so you go to Washington and you hear all the acronyms and stuff. You walk into the Pentagon and you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Well, there's a reason they do that. And so, yeah, we have to disentangle writing from thinking, and I think that's kind of what we're doing a little bit. But it's a real hard sell in my world, in the academic world.
Very interesting. No, love it. Thank you.
Trying to get the sharks in here, guys.
Oh, I didn't mean to send you down that rabbit hole.
Well,
I was semi kidding, and I know it's probably easier to track it's probably easier to track the whales than there are sharks because there's probably a lot fewer of them.
no, but this is why it's an interesting issue, because when you guys talk about knowledge and shapes and stuff, in reality, it becomes very, very difficult to set a shape to knowledge. We
Mhm.
like to kind of think about blobs, but how do you differentiate what different parts of the blob means? Just doing it with text might be too much. So with a question like sharks, I expect that is more statistical rather than each shark. So I'm wondering what kind of visualizations would come out of that. So
Right.
I think
So, I
it's
mean, I can see an actual real world usage of this because we are disrupting the climate in the oceans in such a way that it's going to cause unpredictable behavior among the creatures that have to live there, whales, sharks, or whatever.
yeah,
And so, for instance, there's suddenly a starvation issue with sharks, and they all cluster around this one beach. Maybe you don't want to swim there, right? Or something like that, which is a data point that we don't have. Usually somebody gets, attacked first, and then we go, okay, there's too many sharks around. Um, and so, that's a visualization that is a non-textual visualization that very people can look at very carefully and go, okay, I'm going to swim over here, not over here. And there's a million different applications for that as well, not just sharks, but there's clusters of. Well, we saw it during COVID. COVID clusters of these are places you don't want to go. Um, my wife and daughter went to a BTS concert last weekend, or not last weekend, week before last. And what they didn't know until after the fact is that they sat in the COVID section. It's everybody from that section was TikToking afterwards. Hey, I've got COVID. And my daughter got COVID. So, it's like that would have been useful information before the fact. But that kind of thing,
yeah. No, absolutely. But so I'm not sure if you were there, Benja, but in the beginning, I put on the headset and I had the papers from a conference, select one, and of course you could have opened it to read it, but that's not really primary. But select one, and then all the citations appear in the space behind it. And going away from you in the Z dimension, they're sorted by time. Now, I don't know what the X and Y coordinate should be used for, if anything. Maybe it should just be a list. If you have ideas, I'd love to try them. And it's kind of fun. But can we do more interesting shapes, I guess, is the question I'm saying. I'm trying to put, yeah.
Was that in last week's session? I haven't watched that one yet.
Oh,
You show that?
yeah, I'll show you now, but also because maybe bring us back to that discussion. But as one thing I threw over to Claude and Xcode was I got a user issue from my main app author, and it was in French. So I went to translate it, but I decided why translate to an LLM? They speak all the languages, so I just pasted it into Xcode. A user said this, can you fix it? So the first thing it does, translate it from French, does a numbered list of what the issues are in the list, and now it's trying to address them. Right, that's the kind of stuff that just boggles my mind. Right, yeah, let's have a brief walk around of just 3 papers. Okay, it's already up, so on my screen now it's very messy. Trying to kind of restart. Okay, so here we have just 2 papers. And move them over here, select one. And these are all the papers it cites. And when I select those, some of them I have the citation information, what they cite. So it's kind of fun, but it's not at this point what one might call useful, right? And yeah, so here's the reading of that. We can do outline. So all that basic stuff is already here. The one we have on the Mac is, of course, much more advanced. Now I'll move it across. But you can read the whole paper here.
Yeah, very interesting.
Do you find you could actually read a paper in the headset for very long?
100%. The
Okay.
early experiment we had, I think it's knowledge base. I'm not sure if it's building properly. That was, yeah, oh, yeah, that was based on other data, but we also have Reader. Where's Reader? I've kind of demoted that for now because it's very basic. Have I even removed? Okay, there's Reader. I don't know what's missing its icon, but so here's a paper. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not opening up, but yeah, no, you absolutely can. In the Apple Vision Pro, the quality of the text is really, really good. So the basic mechanisms for reading we have is to have it all horizontal like this. We had that last week. So you could have every single page slightly curving around. So that was quite pleasant. And I don't mind doing some of the obvious things, but I think we need to think of something a bit more advanced, something more spatial.
Yeah, I've done that
Just
with wiki pages,
Please do.
FederaWiki lineups, where you have a bunch of pages, you know, and rather than have your tabs there, you kind of expand your tabs. So you can have all the things you're reading up front and in your face and just turn your head to go see.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see if the sharks are still not there. But yeah, Benja, you were going to say something as well.
Yeah, what are you calling that prototype with where you have all the papers and then almost the lineage of their
That's part of it. That's part of origami text. So
Okay.
origami text is just very strictly simple EPUB, very little formatting included, and quite a bit of metadata in the HTML that's in the EPUB and in a JSON in the EPUB.
Okay. Yeah, with that view that you were showing, I think it'd be interesting to see, like we were talking about the semantic zoom a couple of weeks ago. Like, I don't know if you all heard of like Sankey diagrams.
Write the
I'm not
name.
even sure I'm saying it right. If you've heard of those types of diagrams, I think that kind of flow, especially in a 3D space, could be very interesting. It would also collapse like every single thing to have its own line for there to be almost these like different sized pipes so you could follow visually the origin of an idea, say the origin of stretch text or the origin of, like the foundational, widely cited, ideas, things that have started new genres or new whole areas of study. That would be pretty fascinating if you could do that purely based off of some kind of aggregation of citations and the trails of them.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about uh, so let's say, as you said, stretch text. So you would have all the kind of modern papers that mention it, and behind them what they cited. Yeah, bibliometrics analysis, exactly, Peter. But explain to me, because I've also been very pro that, but explain to me how you see that will be useful rather than just jumping to the first one.
Because like the idea is getting changed across time. The first time, sometimes there's like the essence and everything else is derivative or something. But I think in other situations, there's the first kind of kernel of the idea that might not even be the main point of a paper. And yet that's what gets cited more and more. And then our understanding of it changes, especially as like there's new mediums that come about. Um, so yeah, visually, I'm not sure, but I think it'd be interesting to see almost the evolution of an idea. Maybe scrub through it, almost like the Inner Atlas, like starting from Pangea across the millions of years. I don't
Or
know. It's
maybe,
more just brainstorming than having a solid use case,
or maybe tracking sharks.
or maybe tracking sharks.
These are tracked sharks, Tom. I don't know what that data is. In the headset, it's easier to see the data. So this is tracked whales. And this Argo floats. I haven't figured, yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. It takes quite a while to load, but I think it's around 4,000 buoys in the oceans around the world that all go up and down quite deep, actually. And I haven't even figured out properly what they measure, but they give a lot of data. And we should probably find a way to use that data. These are the whales. Oh, we can also do this. Unfortunately, on the Mac, it makes the background go gray, but you see what happens to the coastlines? This is if the sea levels go down.
What if they go up? Can't go up, can you?
We haven't done that. That's a good idea to try. But if we go to the Earth layer, we can
And that's
do,
obviously a point of conversation with climate change.
yeah, no, I think that's a good point. We have a scale here, so we can do terrain exaggerations. So we can do that massively. Yeah, sea level rise is also interesting, of course. That was bad. Yeah, those, I searched for what you said. So this is what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, we have experimented here with all kinds of stuff. We have a 3D one. Yeah, I guess we just need to keep, by the way, I've added my personal calendar to one of these too. There's all this data we have access to now. So this is slightly old. Here is connections, what's connected, how. trails. We have so many opportunities now. It's really up for us to decide on which ones to try. And they're not as easy as getting some sharks in the map. So Eric, do you want to talk more about your sequencing in 3D maybe?
Okay, so like say you're using InterAtlas and you're trying to make a point, say about the whale migrations. You take a few snapshots showing, yeah, like maybe go back 10 years, go back 20 years, and you want to tell a story. So if those snapshots are 3D models, and then you're writing an EPUB making your argument, hey, the whales were happier 20 years ago, then you can have people explore the 3D models. So that's why I was asking what exactly is exported. So like, is it like a snapshot of 3D, or is it the full data where the user can then interact with it in the EPUB?
Well, what I'm doing in InterAtlas is the full data.
Yeah.
And we have to decide, I mean, it's not going to be a full cloud cover from that day. It will be show cloud cover. So it'll have to get it live. But this is for us to decide if we want to design the system so that maybe the user on export, there's a choice. What do you want to have shown as data and what do you want to have frozen of the data? You know, these are important options.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is how much flexibility do you have in that model element, like to add a slider, which would then manipulate the data for the model?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you do all the data in the export, then it can get a lot bigger,
Right.
but it serves a different purpose.
Yeah, and like the test I sent you, the model maybe 40 megabytes, and yeah, normally, yeah, I don't know what kind of bloat factor we'd be dealing with in the future.
Tom, can you send me the EPUB that crashed on your system, please, by the way?
Yeah, I'm trying to find you. By the way, it's a pretty good sized file. Just checking to see how big it is.
So Eric, what was the one you sent me?
Okay, it was generated by ChatGPT, and it has a placeholder image if it can't render the model, and then the model is a sculpture of Ted Nelson that I downloaded from the Internet Archive. So I'm just curious if you could see it because I can't render it. I tried the Books app, the Apple
Is
Books.
it the Starship Earth?
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, you're seeing. Are you just seeing the image? Because it should render the model. It, probably if you have a compatible renderer.
This is the kind of data stuff we should check on. So I'm going to open Author.
Hmm.
I'm going to make a new.
It's in the chat. Wrote it.
Thank you.
There are a lot of things going on my computer right now, so it may be related to that in terms of things downloading and uploading and stuff. As I said, I'm in the midst of a transition.
Well, hang on. It was an EPUB. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
hang on 1 second.
Yeah. First go into Apple Books with the EPUB.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Now, so that's the placeholder image. Now, can you do anything hovering over there or clicking it?
No. That's very interesting.
Yes, that's Apple Books. Now the question is, I mean, you could try using, I sent you the link to the model if you want to play with that as well, embedding that in your own documents. But yeah, this was just ChatGPT saying, okay, I could give you a placeholder image and also embed the model, but I'm not sure what would trigger the viewing of the model. And I sent you the chat log if you want to explore that further.
So here's a weird thing. Well, it's working on that. Okay, so that works. Right, so let's have a look then. Origami text. It's looking inside the EPUB.
Mhm.
And what did it work for us before? Yeah, so now it should work. So it's looking up what you said. I'm now opening what we just had previously. Okay, did you see that? So here is the image from InterAtlas. Click on it, open source. And it doesn't always work yet. I still have some round trips, but at least it opened InterAtlas and it tried.
So it's using the InterAtlas app to render it.
Yeah. So I'm thinking I'll come back to this if it loads. Where are you guys? I'm thinking about that diagram, Benja, that you mentioned. The annoying thing about time is how should we even pretend we can generalize? Would you like it to be a horizontal line back and forth, or should it be in front of us? Should it be on the floor? Should we walk inside it? You know, how do we extrude it? How do we? What would you guys like as the default initial interaction, just for fun, without overthinking it?
Sorry, could you ask it one more time?
Yeah, because time can be represented in many ways, like in the diagram you suggested. So when let's say that we have the Herculaneum thing. Oh, actually, let's say the Roman Forum. So we have a piece of history that is, let's say, just 100 years. Now, do we want that to be read across like we're reading Western text from further away or to now? Or do we want it to go into the past away from us like we had the documents? Or would we like it to be on the ground, like you're walking on a huge time thing?
So I'd like it to be so the references that uh, Vincent had earlier uh, were to pieces of literature, and the question is, how far does that go? Okay, you know, at what point does the in joke not become effective anymore? Does Greek literature count? What about Persian literature or Chinese literature? How do those pathways fade over distance and time? But I mean, really, we're talking about because it's really interesting to see how ideas come together. And social media is a live exposition of ideas of the moment. But where did they come from? You know, you can trace a lot of the crazy stuff on social media today back to the John Birch Society or something like that, because there's a connection there. That to me is the most interesting thing. It's time and space, because time creates space, but it's also persistence of ideas, and whether they're able to travel over time. If you go through the Bible and analyze where they rip things off from, is an interesting exercise too. I mean, this comes from the Babylonians, or this comes from so on. I'm talking about the Old Testament now,
No,
but
Tom, so we all completely strongly agree with that. How do we want to experience it? Let's say we have built so many windows here and waiting for these things to update for us. Let's say that let's say we have all the data. And even dealing with time is okay, because if it's a fuzzy thing, we literally make it fuzzy visually. But we're standing in the middle of the Forum in Rome, and we've decided to, just for simplicity's sake, not walk through the whole thing. That's too complicated. Okay, we're sitting. Let's say it this way, and we want to see the 100 years of Roman history, just that. And we want to be able to choose, just like you said, Tom. Romans were obsessed with the Greeks. So, the Greek influence on what they were doing is important. The weather, whether there was
right, exactly.
Stuff. All of these things are very, very relevant. How would we, let's say, forget big chunky headsets. It's like glasses or contact lenses. And I don't know if you've all seen in InterAtlas or whatever, there are controls on your arms. So you won't have to copy that. But let's assume you have easy access to, do whatever things, and you can then spawn angles, change directions, and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, so for instance, one thing that is of real interest to me as a social scientist right now is, Rome was a very diverse society in a sense, because they very much accumulated when they took over a place. They brought all the good stuff back with them as well, and there were temples to Egyptian gods and to Greek gods and to Persian gods in Rome.
So Tom,
yeah,
yes,
but so
how to view it?
So here's the thing: if you could come up with a diversity index and then track that with the relative health of society, because what we're seeing in the United States right now is we're shutting down all of that. And how is that going to ultimately destroy the country? Because that constant inflow of new ideas and new people and all that sort of thing has always been a strength of America. And now all of a sudden, we're telling everybody to get lost. And
Tom,
yeah,
that is a worthwhile, interesting thing.
But how would you compare the two? If you could have a graph that shows, relatively speaking, diversity of ideas in Rome versus diversity ideas in the United States over time, that would be really a useful visualization.
So if you have the data for that, even now you can do two graphs overlaid, like in the liquid thing. So there you can, over any time period, you can do rain or NASDAQ or whatever, and it'll go together. But do we want to see it as that kind of what kind of a shape do we want it to be? I mean, okay, I'm going to.
How about a circulatory system?
Well, Benjo was about to jump in with something.
Well, now my mind's just thrown by the circulatory system. I kind of love the idea of the flow. I'm curious to pull on that thread. What I was going to say was, I'm reading, the book How Things Work to my son, and he really likes the different pages and stuff. But then I get to kind of learn how different things work as well. So somehow, that's how I would want to walk around with the contact lenses or the glasses, is when I look at a certain column or I look at certain ornate something or other, I want to be able to see maybe only what's relevant to what I'm staring or focusing at. Sometimes you still need some focus upon or select, but then I want to see almost the muses or the prime inspirations or what came before it. And it would be completely different. Like, each person travels differently. You're not all interested in the same thing, the same place for the same reason. But if it was coded to me, it would only bring up those several wiki links that I really cared about, if we're just talking about Wikipedia or something. Yeah.
And
The whole
that
relevance
immediately
thing.
brings up the idea of the is it David Macaulay books, the Cathedral and so on and so forth, where he shows all of the construction over time of a cathedral and all the different pieces. It would be really cool to have that, like walk around a cathedral and see, okay, this is where they had to put this in order to build that, and so on and so forth. You still see some of that stuff. The cathedral in the town where my mother's from, Regensburg, there is there's a thing next to the cathedral. It's called the Donkey's Tower, and they would literally it was literally they would walk donkeys up this tower in order to haul stuff up to the top, and it's still there. So you can actually see that as a artifact of the construction. But there are other things that, of course, are long gone. And it's true of anything. If you're building something, the scaffolding, or building a ship, and you see the way it goes together in a dock, and so on and so forth, or a way it's been modified over time, or something like that. Those things are, from a visual perspective, really interesting. But also, again, you can take that metaphor into a book and an idea, because that's built over time too. So what scaffolding? Who did this person steal their ideas from? And that's, to me, the same concept, but it's in a more abstract form than the physical concept of a building or a machine or something like that. And that to me is, again, something where a good metaphor would be to be able to do something like what those David Macaulay's books do.
But more
Yeah.
specifically then, okay, so we're talking about academic thought as one of the things, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And Benja and also Timur, who's here every once in a while, talk about the origins of ideas and tracing the ideas. I guess we would need to base that on academic papers, because we can't cite something that hasn't been put in citable form, first of all, right? So that would be our units. So then we would need to have each of the academic papers analyzed to a basic level of, does it discuss this topic? Because maybe it discussed the topic, but using different vocabulary. So these are all really, really good examples.
And the strength of the underlying data is something that we often forget.
Yeah, but so this is all then about using AI to have the data. But once we have the data, we need to decide how we want to actually interact with it, view it, go through it, right?
Yeah, but I'm talking about the legitimacy aspect of it, because
But the legitimate, hang on, that's related to provenance and truth and data. That's fine. But
yeah, but you can be true and not have it up. So education, for instance, is filled with these groundbreaking studies that are going to change how we learn and all this other stuff. And I used to be the nightmare of my administration, because they would throw this stuff at me, and I would go, your sample size is 30 students.
yeah, but
You
Tom,
know,
but Tom,
and so that sort of
no,
thing. And we see this all the time with
yes,
disease things too.
but Tom, yes,
Yeah.
but that is the source of the visualization,
Right.
That is important, but there's so many aspects of information. One of the things.
But I think legitimacy is a central thing. You cannot ignore it.
I'm not ignoring it,
Yeah.
but I am completely ignoring it because it's out of scope, right? The thing is, we have to decide what kind of information we're working with. Of course we do. But I'm asking the really, really difficult question. Once you have data that you trust, that you think is relevant, verifiable, when it comes to time, what is a useful means through which you want to navigate it? How do you want it actually to be? The sheet, the world, blocks. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? This has to be decided if it is to be built.
Yeah, and I don't want to bang this drum, the legitimacy thing too much, but the number of connections that go in and out of an article are an interesting measure, potentially, of legitimacy. in terms of what people pull in, what people push out, how often it's been duplicated. The famous one is the autism study in vaccines, which is a really bad study. And yet it's become central to our political discourse because it was published in a peer-reviewed journal, and there's all sorts of problems with it. And I see this all the time.
Yeah, but Tom,
Yeah.
that's fine. But it is literally outside. When you put on the headset for this kind of thing, there is
hmm
time and there is stuff. Whether everybody has lied in every single paper or it's true is really beyond the scope of this. It is an important thing, but there are so many layers outside of that we just can't address. I mean, even with Author, my word processing writing software, I can't check the veracity of the claims being written. I mean, I guess we could with the special AI thing, but point is dreaming up a way where we can put on a headset and see time showing us what we care about is really difficult.
Yes. Again, though, if you're an honest scholar, you realize you're part of a continuum, and that you are. And so, if we're going to use this for scholarly purposes, you have to understand that what you're building your research on and handing on to the next step is built on solid foundations. If you build your research on a bunch of sketchy sources, but the problem is my sketchy source may not be your sketchy
Yeah,
source,
but
and those are where a
Tom,
lot of the
Tom,
arguments happen.
Tom,
But yeah,
this comes up a lot. I completely agree with you, right?
yeah,
But it's outside of scope for the discussion of presentation, right? We cannot deal with every aspect of the information. So the veracity and relevance, it is a little, yeah. Oh no, Eric has his hand up. Over to you, Eric.
Yep. So remember that Game of Life prototype that I showed where you could walk through the generations of the Game of Life? Well, that assumed like you would be able to get up and walk forward and stand between two generations and see the one in front of you and maybe a little bit of what's behind it. Well, you could also have like the idea of pulling the whole thing forward to, going to like the 100th generation. Now, so the idea of capturing arguments and debates, that should all be part of the data, and you should be able to reify the links, so you could have comments on comments and be able to trace that path of thinking as well. So I keep coming back to ZZ structure because it seems to have captured all the possibilities there. You're rotating in different dimensions as you need them. But technically to get there, that's a big step. So we need some baby steps on the way. Now,
So,
view specs came up as an issue. Like, how can we make it easier for someone to study these papers?
so let's
right.
say, I think that's absolutely the point. Yes. So let's say we are working on the ACM hypertext papers, which are going to be released next month. And I will have converted them into EPUB. Or rather, whatever. No, they will be. Let's say they're available via EPUB. We don't know what ACM will decide yet, and we're certainly not going to take their pirate them or anything like that. But so you have them as EPUB. So the number one thing you want to know there is what's rubbish and what's not. That's relatively simple. We kind of have that. So then the second stage is there are some papers that you feel are relevant to you. So you want to do the basic thing we looked at earlier. You want to see if the sources for those papers. Do they ignore the important sources or are they bringing in spurious nonsense? So that's one thing you want to do. But I think another thing that you guys are bringing into this is the notion of, let's say, you are very interested in UI or data, some specific aspect of this, right? It might be nice to have a certain way you can view the relevance of the different papers to the kind of concerns you have, right? Now, this discussion has also brought it wider. So if we do, if you remember when I had the wall of citations, then I did some gestures and it spread out into time. So the papers that are a long time ago, far back, and if I do this, I can drag the whole thing towards me. I forgot to show that. So it's the whole room is movable. But do we want to layer in stuff there? I could imagine we get to, one plane of Z would be 1977, let's say. Do we want to be able to have politics on the side? Or weather events? Would we want to be able to tag those seemingly irrelevant things on the side to help contextualize reading? Maybe that is exactly what we want. And if so,
Well, they're all part of the system.
yeah.
I mean,
you have hints in your peripheral vision. So you do want to, you could point at it and you can drill down to the weather of 1977, the snowstorm we had in 78.
One of the problems of text in an academic sense is that it does tend to silo thought. And so, people who are looking at politics, for instance, are going to look at politics of a situation. So when they say, okay, the French Revolution happened because of these political factors. But one of the most interesting things I've read about the French Revolution recently is that there was a tremendous drought in France in the years before it. And that this caused a lot of social disruption that and people just ignored that for a long time in the scholarly literature about what generated the French Revolution. And that to me is the most interesting thing, because if I can say, okay, this was going on the side here, and while it may not seem to be directly related, there is a connection, and the connection is the part that I'm interested in exploring. And then A plus B equals C. I mean, I'm always looking at this from the perspective of a system diagram. So what you may think is peripheral may actually be central, and so on and so forth, depending on which set of glasses you're using, right? So
Tom, if you were able to take a snapshot of the 3D environment when you realize that connection and then pull that into an EPUB where you write your argument, that becomes another link into the system.
Yeah, but I got to see it first, and that's the key. That's what I'm working on, is trying to figure out a way to see this stuff.
The weak links, yeah.
Yeah, and if I can't see it, it's not helpful, because I don't know what's there. And I'm constantly discovering new things where I like read a book and people are, and the thing is annoying is all get out is that someone else who's read this book 20 years ago is like, yeah, that's obvious. I'm like, yeah, except that I've never explored that particular pathway before, so it wasn't necessarily obvious to me. And so what I've always been excited with about this project is how can we make things obvious that are far from it. So yeah, I'm going to need to bail here in a minute too, because I need to get back to some stuff.
I think this has been very useful. I'm going to write a prompt before you guys leave. Benji, are you also leaving? Do you have a minute?
Yes, that's right. I'm here for a minute though.
Oh, okay. Tom, if you can, I don't know how much it'll build, but what you've said is very fascinating, all of you now. So I'm going to just write this. So that's one thing. Along the side of the user, we need to have Can you read this?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that is, and this is kind of getting at the central thing of terms of the design of the environment, you focus on documents, you focus on citations, and those are things that tend to focus your attention, and they're designed to do that. But what we're talking about is peripheral vision, which isn't, how do you display peripheral vision? And that's all we've been talking about in terms of today. I mean, because the peripheral vision of looking at the graffiti at Herculaneum is, where did this reference come from? right? So I think I'm looking at something that somebody drew on a wall in Herculaneum, and that in and of itself has an interest. But if I can then say, okay, but this idea came from Greece via Persia via blah blah blah, that's even more interesting because that tells me something about the connections in the society. I mean, it's social media. How does that social part actually work? How does that connection actually work if I'm trying to study that?
No, exactly. So let me just explain this prompt, and hopefully I'll have something to show you guys by next time. So the idea is you have all these papers in space going away from you on the Z. Then on the side, you have a Sankey diagram, right? And for the sake of testing here, the first one is going to be for each year, because each, papers are only released by year, so it's useful. You will have a point that is the lowest temperature of a city and the highest temperature. So it's kind of irrelevant. It just reminds me of the early Roman stuff, but it should allow us to have then on the side something going up and down a little bit, right? But because we have in the liquid information basic app able to import almost any data, once we have this, we should be able to think of something more useful, right? Like we could even have the NASDAQ, so you can see this year everything crashed. So, why were the hypertext papers different? Whatever it might be. But because, thank you, Benja, you brought this particular diagram to our attention. Of course, it's a classic diagram. That means that we can choose to have several variables to see how they grow and shrink relatively, which is very interesting. By the way, this just happened to build. It's trying to fix something here, and that is now, again, not what it should be. Anyway, so thank you all.
The fun
Thanks,
of vibe coding.
It's fun sometimes, and other times it's a hair-pulling exercise.
But then again, so straight up coding, it's the same thing.
Exactly.
Or writing.
Except I can't do any of that. So for me, it's binary choice. Anyway, thank you very much. It's
thanks.
been it's really good.
Have a
Bye,
good week.
everybody.
I appreciate
See you
it.
next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.